Okay, so we are in Book 2 of the Bhagavatam, Discourse 6, Glories of the Cosmic Being. So we're still in the conversation between Brahma and his son Narada that we've been in for a little bit. Brahma continued. The mouth of the cosmic being is the birthplace of the organ of speech, as well as of the god of fire, Agni Deva, the deity who presides over the organ of speech. The 7 dhatus, or essential ingredients of his body, skin, flesh, blood, fat, marrow, sinew, and bone, are the source of the 7 Vedic meters, the 7 chandahas, or poetic meters of the Vedic hymns, Gayatri, Jagati, Ushnik, Trishtub, Anushtub, Pankti, and Brihati. And even so, his tongue is the source of all kinds of food, the food of the gods, the food of the ancestors, and the remains of both, which is like ambrosia for human beings, of the 6 varieties of taste, as well as of the sense of taste, and the birthplace of Varuna, the deity who presides over the sense of taste. His nostrils, the cosmic being's nostrils, are the excellent source of all the 5 kinds of vital airs, prana, apana, vyana, udana, and samana, the 5 prana vayus in the body, as well as of the element of air. Similarly, his olfactory sense is the birthplace of the twin gods, the Ashvins, the celestial physicians, and the source of all kinds of food grains, as well as of all ordinary and special odors. His sense of sight is the source of all colors, as well as of the lights that reveal them, while his eyes are the source of heaven and the birthplace of the sun. Even so, his ears are the source of the 4 cardinal points, that's north, south, east, and west, as well as of all sacred places. His sense of hearing, of ether and its special characteristic sound, while his limbs are the source of the essence of all things and the receptacle of all loveliness. His sense of touch is the sense of touch as well as of the element of air, and even so of all kinds of sacrificial performances. Similarly, the hair on his body are the source of all kinds of trees and plants, or of such of them as contribute to the performance of sacrifices. So special sacredness is due to all the plants that are used in yajnas. His hair are these, so not his body hair, but his head hair, are the source of clouds, and his beard and mustaches of lightning, while the nails of his fingers and toes are the source of rocks and iron. Similarly, his arms are the birthplace of the guardians of the spheres, who are mostly engaged in the work of protecting the universe. His stride is the support of the 3 worlds, the earth, the region of the air, and heaven. That's Bhu, Bhuva, and Svaha, the 3 worlds invoked in the Gayatri mantra and other mantras. While Sri Hari's feet are the source of security and protection, as also the place where all one's desired objects can be had by worshiping his feet. The penis of the cosmic being is the source of water, the seminal fluid, and creation, and the birthplace of the god of rain, as well as of Prajapati, the god presiding over creation. That's an aspect of Brahma. While his faculty of generation is the source of delight resulting from copulation for the sake of offspring. In other words, the pleasure of sex and sexual pleasure. Even so, his organ of excretion, O Narada, meaning his anus, is the birthplace of Yama, as well as of the god Mitra, and the origin of the function of evacuating the bowels, while his anus has been spoken of as the source of all destruction of life, the origin of hell, that's Naraka, and the birthplace of Mrityu, the principle of death, as well as of Nirti, a goddess of poverty and darkness. His back is the source of defeat and unrighteousness, as well as of tamas, the principle of darkness or opacity. His arteries and veins are the source of big and small rivers, while the system of his bones is the source of mountains. The abdomen of the cosmic being is known to be the source of the unmanifest primordial matter, the chyle and the oceans, and the origin of all beings, as well as of their dissolution, while his heart is reputed to be the source of the mind. Even so, the chitta, or reason, of the Supreme is the excellent source of dharma, both dharma, righteousness itself, and dharma, the god presiding over it, which is another aspect of Yamadeva. While his heart is reputed, so the chitta of the Supreme is the source of dharma, of myself, Brahma, yourself, Narada, Sanaka and his three brothers, Sanatana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumara, and Lord Shiva, as also of Vijnana, understanding, and the faculty of reason. Myself and yourself, Lord Shankara, those elder brothers of yours, Sanaka and the others, the gods, demons, and men, that's Devas, Asuras, and Naras, the Nagas, birds, deer, and reptiles, the Gandharvas and celestial nymphs, the Apsaras, the Yakshas, Rakshasas, and Bhutas, which are ghosts, serpents and beasts, the ancestors, the Siddhas, Vidyadharas, and Charanas, trees and other species of living beings residing either in water, on land, or in the air, the planets and lunar mansions, that's the Grahas and Nakshatras, comets and stars, lightning and thundering clouds, nay, all this universe, past, present, and future, is no other than the Supreme Person. It is by him that all this stands pervaded, and it covers only a span of the cosmic being, not the entirety of him. Even as the sun shines outside while illuminating its own orb, so does the Supreme Person cast his effulgence inside as well as outside the universe, while illumining his own cosmic body. So meaning that it is bright inside the sun, as well as, in fact, far more so than outside it. He transcends all that is subject to death, as well as the fruit of action, and is the Lord of that immortal and fearless state of moksha. That is why, O divine sage, no one can fathom the glory of the Supreme Person. All the worlds represent only a fraction of the Supreme Person, and it is in these worlds, forming part of the Lord, that all created beings are known to reside. And it is in the three highest heavens, Janaloka, Tapoloka, and Satyaloka, standing above Maharaloka, which itself exists above the three worlds, being Bhurloka, Bhuvaraloka, and Svaraloka or Svargaloka, that immortality, security, and fearlessness have been established. In other words, immortality, security, and fearlessness are universal in Janaloka, Tapoloka, and Satyaloka, but not in any of the lokas below those. The three ashramas or stages of life, those of the brahmacharis, vanaprasthas, and the sannyasis, none of whom begets children during those stages of life, constitute his 3 feet, which have their abode outside the 3 worlds, outside Bhurbhuva and Svargalokas. While the 4th foot, the stage of the householder, who does not observe a vow of long celibacy, dwells inside the 3 worlds. The scriptures speak of 2 paths, the path of action, which has been characterized as avidya, or ignorance, because of its being conducive to rebirth, and the path of upasana. Upasana, meditation on God. Literally, upasana means sitting upon, meaning essentially to sit and meditate upon something, typically God or some aspect of God, which has been designated as vidya, because it leads to knowledge or the realization of truth. The jiva, or the embodied soul, follows either of these 2 paths, the first of which, the path of action, leads to enjoyment, and the other to final beatitude, while the Supreme Purusha is the foundation of both. Even as the sun, though illumining and warming all with its rays, is yet distinct from all, the Lord, from whom was evolved this universe in the form of an egg, as well as his cosmic body, consisting of the 5 gross elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, the 10 indriyas, which are the 5 senses of perception, and the 5 organs of action, and the 3 gunas. Though indwelling in all these and manifest in their form, is entirely beyond the universe as well as his cosmic body. When I, remember it's Brahma speaking, when I sprang up from the lotus in the navel of this cosmic being, I found no materials for sacrifice beyond the limbs of the Supreme Person. Of these requisites, O noblest sage, I collected from the limbs of the cosmic being himself materials for sacrifice, such as the animals to be sacrificed, trees for sacrificial posts, blades of kusha grass, this sacrificial ground, and a most advantageous time, typically meaning spring, for the performance of a sacrifice, vessels and other necessary things, cereals like rice, barley, and so on, clarified butter, and other substances, saps of soma and other plants, gold and other metals, earths of various kinds, water, the sacred texts of the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, and the Sama Veda, and the duties of the 4 chief priests officiating at a Vedic yajna, the Hota, Advaryu, Udgata, and Brahma. Those are 4 different types of priest who are involved in Vedic yajnas. The names of sacrifices, such as Jyotishtoma, etc., that's a specific yajna, and mantras such as Svaha, etc. Svaha is probably the most common Vedic mantra because it's said every time anything is offered into the fire. Svaha is a goddess, the wife of Agni, the fire goddess and the goddess of offerings. As also the sacrificial fees and the sacred vows to be observed during the performance of a sacrifice. The mention of the gods, the texts laying down the process of conducting sacrifices, the formal undertaking of a vow to perform a sacrifice and the process of performing it, the movements at the close of a sacrifice and contemplation on the deities, expiatory ceremonies for errors and omissions, meaning at the end of a yajna and also often at the beginning, there are certain ceremonies you make asking for forgiveness for the errors which you are about to commit or the errors which you just committed, assuming that you're not going to do it perfectly since it's extremely detailed, and offering the whole performance to the Lord. Having thus collected all the materials from the limbs of the cosmic being, I worshipped with those very materials the same Supreme Person, Lord Vishnu. Then these your brothers, the 9 lords of creation, with perfect concentration of mind, adored the Supreme Person, who is manifest and unmanifest. Thereafter, when the time came, the Manus and the other rishis, the mains, meaning the ancestors, the devas, the asuras, and humans, all worshipped the Lord through sacrifices. This universe, O Narada, rests on the support of the same Lord Narayana, who, though essentially devoid of all attributes, assumes innumerable attributes at the dawn of creation by his Maya. I create the universe as commissioned by him. Lord Hara, under his control, dissolves it, while he himself, as the Purusha, Lord Vishnu, preserves it. In fact, it is he who has assumed the 3 powers of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Thus, dear son, have I told you what you inquired of me. There is nothing in this creation, whether existing as a cause or an effect, which is other than the Lord. My words, dear Narada, are never observed to be false. My mind, too, never conceives a false idea, and my senses are never led astray either. This is because I have ever contemplated on Sri Hari with a longing heart. I am Veda personified. My life is full of austere penance, and I am the Lord of Prajapatis and adored by them all. Nay, I practiced yoga and all thoroughness with a concentrated mind. Yet I failed to realize him to whom I owe my existence. I bow to his most blessed feet, which are the home of all auspiciousness and end the cycle of birth and death in the case of those who take refuge in him. Even as the sky knows not its limits, he too is unable to realize the extent of his own Maya. How then can others know it? Neither myself nor you, nor even Vamadeva knows his true nature. How then could the other gods know it? Our mind is so confounded that we fail to comprehend the reality even of this universe, which is a creation of his Maya, but merely speculate about it according to our own understanding. Hail to that Lord whose descent in the world of matter and exploits myself and others constantly sing, but whom none of us knows in reality. That unborn primal person himself creates, protects, and dissolves himself within himself and by himself, cycle after cycle. He is pure absolute consciousness, uniformly abiding as the inner self of all. He is ever true and perfect, has no beginning or end, and is attributeless, eternal, and one without a second. Narada, those who are given to contemplation realize him only when they have perfectly subdued their body, senses, and mind. He, however, disappears from our view when he is assailed by the sophistical reasoning of the wicked. The first manifestation of the Supreme is the Purusha. Besides him, time, svabhava, which is innate disposition of any given thing, prakriti in the form of cause and effect, and mind, the five gross elements, the ego, the modes of prakriti, those being sattva, rajas, and tamas, the senses, the cosmic being, the cosmic body, the cosmic being, and the bodies of all animate and inanimate beings are all manifestations of the all-pervading Lord. Nay, myself, Bhava, Lord Vishnu, these lords of created beings, Daksha and others, meaning the Prajapatis, yourself and other devotees like you, the protectors of heaven, being Indra and others, the guardians of the feathered kingdom, the guardians of the birds, Garuda, and so on, the rulers of the mortal world and the protectors of the subterranean regions, Shesha and others, the lords of the Gandharvas, Vidyadharas and Charanas, various types of deities or spirits, the leaders of the Yakshas, the Rakshasas, the serpents and the Nagas, the foremost among the Rishis and the ancestors, the lords of the Daityas, the Siddhas, and the Danavas. Other than these, such as the rulers of the Pretas, Pishachas, Bhutas, Kushmandas, these are mostly different races of spirits being listed. Then we get into aquatic creatures, beasts and birds, nay, whatever in this world is endowed with supernatural powers, glory, vigor, resolution, physical strength and forbearance, or whatever is possessed of splendor, decorum, good fortune, and intellectual acumen, that which has a wonderful color, and whatever is with or without form, is the same as the ultimate truth. Again, O Narada, the scriptures have described the chief among the sportful descents of the Lord, and I shall presently narrate those most delightful stories, which dry up the impurities of the ears. Please drink this nectar to your heart's content. Sportful descents of the Lord is translating Lila avatars, avatars for the purpose of Lila or play. Thus ends the sixth discourse in Book 2 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. Discourse 7, the stories of the Lord's Lila avatars, or sportful descents. Brahma continued, when the infinite Lord assumed the form of the divine boar, representing all kinds of yajnas, and determined to lift the earth from the bottom of the ocean, that's referencing a system of cosmology that we'll get into in Book 5, but referring not to the Earth of our experience, a spherical planet, but a much, much vaster esoteric loka, the Bhumandala disk, which corresponds to the ecliptic of the sun. It's a whole cosmological model. That is the Earth, a much vaster world that he raised up from the lower patalas. Hiranyaksha, the firstborn of Diti, came upon him for an encounter, meaning for a fight, inside that great ocean, and the Lord tore him to death with his tusks, even as Indra clipped the wings of the mountains. Next, he was born, Indra clipping the wings of the mountains is a reference to a ancient poem in the Vedas, referring to Indra with lightning bolts striking the flanks of mountains and breaking off parts of them. Next, he was born as the son of Ruchi, who was one of the Prajapatis, and his wife Akuti, a daughter of the very first Manu, Svayambhuva. And the name of this avatar was Suyagnya, and he held the position of Indra in the first Manvantara, the Svayambhuva Manvantara, and begot through his consort Dakshina a group of gods who bore the title of Suyama, the Suyama gods, who have long since ceased to exist. They were the gods of an earlier cycle. When, as Indra, he relieved the great affliction of all the three worlds, he was renamed by Svayambhuva Manu, his maternal grandfather, as Hari, the reliever of distress, and that's how he came to be given the name Hari. Again, he was born, O Narada, as the son of Prajapati Kardama and his wife Devahuti, On this occasion, the avatar was named Kapila, with 9 sisters, and he imparted to his mother the knowledge of the spirit, by means of which she wiped off in the course of that very life the dirt of attachment to the world of matter, which had polluted her heart, and attained to the state of Kapila, meaning to the state of Vishnu, Kapila was his avatar. Pleased with the sage Atri, one of the 7 sages who held the office of the Saptarishis during the first Manvantara. The Saptarishis are the 7 greatest of rishis, and different rishis hold those 7 offices during different Manvantaras. So during the first Manvantara and also some of the others, Atri was one of the Saptarishis. He was called Atri because Atri means beyond the 3 gunas. Pleased with the sage Atri, who sought from him a son, he said, "I have given myself as a son to you." That is why the Lord became known by the name of Datta when he was born as a son of Atri, or Datta or Dattatreya, since Datta literally means given, or Dattatreya, given by the 3, because he was actually given not by Vishnu alone, but by Brahma and Shiva also. He was a co-avatar of the 3 of them. Purified in body by the dust of his lotus feet, by the dust of Dattatreya's lotus feet, Yadu, Sahasrabahu, who was born in the clan of Kshatriyas bearing the title of Haihaya, the Haihaya clan, and other kings realized the twofold consummation of yoga in the shape of enjoyment and liberation. That path was taught by Dattatreya as a great guru. At the dawn of creation, I, Brahma, practiced austerity for the purpose of creating the various worlds. As a result of that penance of mine, the eternal Lord appeared in the form of the 4 brothers, Sanat Kumara, Sanaka, Sanandana, and Sanatana, all of whom bear the word Sana as a part of their names, and fully expounded in the present Kalpa the truth of the spirit, which had been lost during the dissolution at the end of the preceding Kalpa, and which the sages forthwith perceived in their heart. Of Murti, a daughter of Daksha and the wife of Dharma, the god Dharma, he was born as the twin sages, Narayana and Nara, who were unequaled in the glory of their austere penance. The celestial nymphs or apsaras who accompanied the god of love, Kamadeva, as his army to conquer them, meaning to seduce them from their spiritual practices, beheld there other nymphs as charming as themselves, evolved by dint of their yogic power, and could not violate the sanctity of their vow. So this is making reference to, all of these are making reference to stories which are told elsewhere in more detail. What's happening here is Kamadeva, the god of pleasure, went with a bunch of apsaras to distract Nara and Narayana from their tapasya. And just to show how superior they were to such distractions, Nara and Narayana created a bunch of even better nymphs of their own power, and were completely immune to seduction. So that's what that's referring to. Pious souls, like Lord Shiva, may burn down the god of love with their angry look, but they cannot burn anger, which they find too much to endure and which burns their own self, meaning that they're overcome by anger at times. Such anger is afraid to enter the pure heart of the divine sages, Nara and Narayana. How then could lust ever penetrate their mind? Pierced by the shaft-like words of his stepmother Suruchi in the presence of his royal father, King Uttanapada, Dhruva, who was yet a child, this is, again, obviously a whole story that's being referenced but not told, it'll be told later, betook himself to the woods to practice austere penance. Pleased with the praises that he uttered, the Lord bestowed upon him an eternal abode, the polar star, which celestial sages extol to this very day while coursing round it, both up and down. So to his great Bhakta Dhruva, he gave the polar star, the star itself, as his eternal abode. King Vena, a descendant of Dhruva, having gone astray, all his power and fortune was burnt by the thunderbolt of the Brahmana's curse, and he was about to descend into hell. When, therefore, the Brahmanas prayed to the Lord, he, the Lord, appeared in the form of Prithu, through the churning of Vena's dead body, and rescued Vena, thus earning the epithet of Putra. or a son. It was he again who used the earth as a cow and milked all its rich produce in the shape of food grains, etc., for the benefit of the world, meaning that he was a great promoter of agriculture and such, the Prithu avatar. He, the Lord, was born of King Nabhi and his wife Sudevi, also named Meru Devi, as Rishabha, who, having completely rid himself of all attachment and thoroughly composed his mind and senses, established himself in his spiritual essence and, regarding everything with the same eye, practiced uninterrupted meditation, appearing as an idiot, which state has been spoken of by great seers as the state of a Paramahansa, one who is ever absorbed in abstract meditation. The same Lord who presides over and is worshipped in all sacrifices personally appeared at my sacrifice as Hayagriva, the avatar with the head of a horse, with a golden complexion, who is Veda personified and represents all the sacrifices and all the deities in his person, and from whose nostrils, even as he breathed, issued forth the holy Vedas. During the universal dissolution at the end of the 6th or Chakshusha Manvantara, that immediately preceding the present Manvantara, we're currently in the 7th Manvantara of the present Kalpa, the would-be Manu, King Satyavrata, meaning he was going to be the next Manu, but wasn't yet, beheld the Lord in the form of the divine fish, who, being the stay of the earth that appeared in the form of a boat, supported all the classes of living beings. Picking up the Vedas that had dropped from my mouth into the most dreadful ocean that had washed away and submerged the entire creation, he continued to sport therein as a fish until the next creation. When the leaders of the immortals and the Danava chiefs commenced churning the ocean of milk to get nectar out of it, the primal deity assumed the form of the divine. Here it says tortoise. Technically, it wasn't a tortoise, it was a turtle. They're very similar, but not quite the same thing. And bore on his back Mount Mandara, which served as the churning rod. Now, as the mountain revolved on his back, the friction relieved the itching thereon and brought him a nap. This is a humorous way of saying that. To the great turtle avatar, a mountain sitting on his back and being spun back and forth just kind of felt like pleasantly scratching an itch. In order to dispel the great fear of the gods, the Lord assumed the form of a man-lion, Narasingha, with a face which looked most frightful on account of his restless eyebrows and moving jaws. When the demon chief Hiranyakashipu assailed him with a mace from a distance, the Lord quickly threw him down on his thighs, and even as he tried to wriggle out, the Lord ripped up his belly with his claws. Seized by the foot inside a lake by an alligator of vast strength, technically a crocodile, not an alligator, but again, similar, the famous elephant felt much distressed, and holding up a lotus in his trunk, called out thus, "O primal person, O protector of all the worlds, O Lord of sacred renown, whose names are auspicious to hear." Hearing his invocation, the infinite Lord, Sri Hari, appeared on the scene, armed with his celestial discus, the Sudarshana, and mounted on the shoulders of Garuda. He severed the head of the crocodile with the discus, and taking the elephant, who sought his protection, by his trunk graciously rescued him. Though the youngest of all the sons of Aditi, Lord Vishnu was the foremost among them in point of virtues, as is evidenced by the fact that he covered all the 3 worlds by his strides, the moment King Bali gave him the promise to grant him land measuring 3 paces. Although in the form of a dwarf, he thus wrested the earth under the pretext of asking for land measuring 3 paces. He demonstrated to the world at large that a man who sticks to the path of righteousness cannot be overthrown even by the all-powerful, except through solicitation. Meaning that Mahabali, the Raja of the Asuras, because he stuck to the path of righteousness, even the gods could not overthrow him. Even Vishnu himself could not righteously overthrow him, except through asking him for charity. Dear Narada, to acquire sovereignty over the gods, to acquire the position of Indra, this was not the object sought for by Bali, who placed on the crown of his head as a token of reverence the water in which the foot of the Lord had been washed. nay, who was not the least inclined to do anything other than that which he had solemnly undertaken, even though warned and cursed by his own guru, Shukracharya, who foresaw what Vishnu was up to, but offered to Sri Hari his own body to be measured as the third step by placing his head at the Lord's feet. Immensely pleased with your highly developed devotion, O Narada, the Lord, appearing as the divine Hansa, or the divine swan or goose, taught you the yoga of devotion as well as the divine wisdom, which is like a lamp to reveal the truth of the spirit, in which only men who have taken refuge in Lord Vasudeva can easily grasp. In the various Manvantaras, the Lord, appearing as the Manu, preserves the race of the Manus and wields his authority over all the 10 directions, the 10 directions being north, south, east, west, the ordinal points in between them, and up and down. An authority which is unobstructed, like the discus of Lord Vishnu, spreading by his exploits his charming glory up to the highest heaven, Satyaloka, which lies even beyond Maharloka, Janaloka, and Tapoloka, and inflicting punishment in the capacity of Manu on the wicked kings. And descending into these worlds as Dhanvantari, who is glory itself, the Lord, on the very utterance of his name, immediately cures the diseases of men who suffer from numerous ailments. He won the rank of immortals and got a share in the sacrificial offerings. In other words, the avatar Dhanvantari, who was a king of Kashi or Varanasi, became one of the immortal devas and became someone to whom yajnas were offered. It was he who taught to the world Ayurveda, the science of healthy and long life. When the Kshatriya race turns out to be the enemy rather than the protector of the Brahmanas and abandons the paths of virtue, as if courting the tortures of hell, nay, when it becomes a veritable thorn in the side of the world and is exalted by providence only for its destruction, the Supreme Spirit appears as Parashurama of tremendous prowess and exterminates it thrice 7 times with his sharp-edged axe. Ever disposed to shower his grace on us, will the Lord of Maya take his descent in the line of Ikshvaku? So now we've switched into present tense because as of when this conversation between Brahma and Narada happened, those other avatars up through Parashurama had occurred, but Ramachandra, had not yet happened. So that's why Brahma has just switched into present tense, or into future tense, rather. Will the Lord of Maya take his descent in the line of Ikshvaku as Sri Rama, along with his part manifestations, Bharata, Lakshmana, and Shatrughna? And in obedience to the command of his father, King Dasharatha, he will go in exile to the forest, accompanied by his spouse Sita and younger brother Lakshmana. There the 10-headed monster Ravana will make him his enemy and come to grief. When Sri Rama, intent like Hara upon burning his enemy's city, it's a reference to a story when Lord Shiva burned the Tripura or some enemy cities. The whole host of alligators, serpents, and crocodiles in the ocean will feel terribly oppressed by the look of the Lord, whose eyes will turn crimson with wrath, stirred by separation from his beloved consort. And ocean, with his limbs all trembling due to fear, will immediately allow him a passage to Lanka. Ocean, in this case, being a form of Varuna Deva. During Ravana's encounter with Indra, during his conquests, the tusks of the elephant Airavata bearing Indra on its back were smashed as they struck against Ravana's breast, painting the quarters white with their dust. This made Ravana, the conqueror of all the quarters, laugh. When, however, he carries off the Lord's spouse and stalks between the two contending armies, the Lord will immediately put an end to his laughter, as well as his life, with the mere twang of his bow. In order to relieve the oppression of the earth, which will be overrun by the armies of kings, who are the secondary incarnations of demons, the Lord will be partially born as Sri Balarama and Sri Krishna, representing severally a gray and a dark hair of the deity. The meaning of this is that Balarama was white-skinned and Krishna very dark-skinned. And as we'll later hear, to send down those 2 avatars, Vishnu plucked 2 hairs from his head, one white and one black, and dropped them into the womb of Devaki. and the white became Balarama and the black became Krishna. In these forms, he will perform feats bearing testimony to his greatness, even though his ways are beyond the comprehension of the common people. To suck out the life of the demoness Ulukika, more often called Putana, even as a newborn babe, to turn a cart upside down with his foot while yet 3 months old, and to knock down 2 very high Arjuna trees while crawling on his hands and knees between them. Arjuna is a type of tree, no reference to Arjuna the Pandava in this case. All these feats are such as cannot be conceived to have been performed by anyone else than the Lord himself. Living in Vraja, he will bring back to life the cattle of Vraja, as well as their keepers, who meet their death by drinking the poisonous water of the Yamuna, by casting his gracious look at them. And further, in order to purify the waters of the Yamuna, he will sport in that river and expel the serpent Kalia, whose tongue is ever restless due to the vehemence of the fierce poison within him. The same night, when the forest of rushes begins to be consumed by wildfire and the entire Vraja is dead asleep, meaning the humans who live in Vraja, that Lord of incomprehensible power with Balarama will ask them to close their eyes and save them from certain death. This exploit of the Lord will be indeed supernatural. Every cord that his mother catches hold of to bind her child with will prove inadequate. Nay, when that cowherd lady, that's Yashoda, his adopted mother, beholds the spheres in his mouth, even as he yawns, she will at first be filled with dismay, and then she will be aroused to a sense of his supreme divinity. Again, he will rid his father Nanda of fear and deliver him from Varuna's noose, and will further rescue the cowherd boys that will be shut up in caves by the demon Vyoma. Nay, he will take to his own abode Vaikunta, the people of Gokula, even though they remain working all day long and, due to overexertion, sleep as a log at night. When, on the yearly sacrificial offering to Indra being stopped by the cowherds, the god of rain, Indra, will pour down torrential showers all over the territory of Raja for the destruction of that land, the Lord, in his anxiety to protect them as well as their cattle, will, at the age of 7, graciously and sportfully hold up on his untiring hand Mount Govardhana, even as a tall mushroom, for 7 days. When sporting in the groves on a night bright with the rays of the full moon, he will, as a prelude to his rasa dance, pour out a sweet and prolonged melody, which will kindle the flame of love in the heart of the young cowherdesses. An attendant of Kubera will carry off the gopis, and the Lord, rescuing them, will sever his head. There's a footnote here saying, although the incident connected with Shankachuda, that servant of Kubera, did not occur the very night the famous rasa dance took place, the two events have been promiscuously or carelessly joined together, apparently because Brahma is making only a passing reference to the pastimes of the Lord and is not being so attentive to details. So Brahma was actually mistaken when he is here prophesying in advance those two events would take place on the same night. Nay, Pralamba, Dhenuka, Vaka, Keshi, and Arishta, these are various demons who will fight Krishna. Kansa, the Yavana hero, the demon Naraka, Pondraka, and so on. These are all people who will fight against Krishna. Even so, other champions like Shalva, Dvivida, Balwala, Dantavaktra, the 7 bulls, the demon Shambara, King Vidurata, and Rukmi, the kings of the Kambojas, or the Cambodians. Cambodia is still just named after its ancient Sanskrit name, Kamboja. The Matsyas, the Kurus, the Kekayas, the Sranjayas, and other bragging warriors who will appear on the field of battle armed with a bow will be slain by Sri Hari himself under the assumed names of Balarama, Arjuna, Bhima, and so on, and attain to his divine abode. This is meaning that they are killed by Sri Hari's will, whether or not it's him in person who does it, or whether he, through the workings of karma, arranges for someone, for the Pandavas or someone else to do the killing. By flux of time, the intellectual caliber of men gets dwarfed, and their life too becomes short. When, therefore, the Lord realizes that the import of the entire Veda, which embodies his teachings, can no longer be grasped by them, He manifests himself in every cycle through the womb of Satyavati as Vedavyasa and splits up the tree of the Vedas into many branches. The purpose being so that Brahmins who are no longer capable of memorizing the entire Veda can just memorize a part of it, and a different group of Brahmins can memorize a different part, and so on, make it easier for them to preserve it. When the Asuras, though devoted to the path of the Vedas, will destroy the people with their citadels of invisible velocity built by Maya, the Lord will assume a garb that will delude their mind and prove most alluring to them and teach them many a heresy. At the close of the Kali age, when there will be no discourses on Sri Hari, even in the residences of pious souls, when the twice-born, meaning the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas, will turn heretics and the Shudras will become the rulers of men, nay, when the uttering of Svaha, Svadha, and Vashata will be heard no more, this means when Vedic yajnas will no longer be performed, the Lord will appear as Kalki, his final avatara to end the Kali Yuga. It is the same Lord of infinite powers who manifests the glories of his Maya in the form of austere penance. Myself, Brahma, and the 9 seers who are the lords of created beings at the time of creation, in the form of Dharma, meaning the god Dharma, Yamadeva. Lord Vishnu, the 14 Manus, the immortals, and the rulers of the earth, at the time of preservation, and in the form of Adharma, Hara, the class of serpents, known by the name of Manjuvashas. The Manjuvashas are a clan of Nagas residing in Patala, and demons, etc., at the time of dissolution of the universe. What man, gifted with insight in this world, could catalog the powers of Lord Vishnu, even though he might have counted all the particles of dust on the earth? As the Lord proceeded to measure the 3 worlds, he raised his legs with such irresistible force that the whole universe, from the outermost sheath of Prakriti to the highest heaven Satyaloka, began to shake violently when he supported it by his own might. Neither myself nor those elder brothers of yours know the whole truth about the Lord, who is a storehouse of innumerable potencies, Maya being one of them. How then could others know it? Even the primal deity, Lord Shesha, the serpent god, who is possessed of 1,000 mouths, cannot reach his end even to this day, though he has been singing his praises from eternity. They alone are able to cross the Lord's Maya, so difficult to get over, and know it in reality, to whom that infinite Lord extends his grace, which is possible only when they take refuge in his feet with their whole being and in a guileless manner. And it is these alone who cease to look upon their body, which is the food of dogs and jackals, as their self or as their own. Dear Narada, it is I who know the wonderful creative energy of that supreme being. And so do you and your elder brothers, Lord Bhava, Prahlada, the foremost of the Daityas or Asuras. The Asuras are, there's 2 clans of Asuras mainly, the Danavas and the Daityas. So those are all basically synonyms. The celebrated Swayambhuva Manu and his wife Shatarupa. So he's listing those who know in full the creative energy of the Supreme Being. Swayambhuva Manu and his wife Shatarupa, as well as their sons and daughters. The kings Prachina Barhi, Ribhu, Anga, and Dhruva. Even so, the kings Ikshvaku, the eldest son of Vaivasvata Manu, Pururava, the son of Ila, Muchukunda, Videha, who is also known as Janaka, that's the father of Sita, the wife of Rama, Gadhi, father of the celebrated sage Vishvamitra, Raghu, Ambarisha, Sagara, Gaya, Yayati, the son of Nahusha, and others. So those are all kings who know the creative energy of the Lord, and it's not a complete list. Similarly, kings Mandhata, Alarka, Shatadhanu, Anu, and Rantideva, Devavrata, that was Bhishma of the Mahabharata, the demon king Bali, as well as kings Amurtaraya and Dilipa, the sages Saubhari, Utanka, Devala, Vipalada, Sarasvata, and Parashara, as well as kings Shibi and Bhurishena, and devotees like Udhava, Vibhishana, Hanuman, Upendra Datta, that's Shuka Deva, the sage Shuka. Arjuna, Preta's son, the Pandava Arjuna. Artishena, Vidura, and Srota Deva know his Maya. So that was a list of people, a partial list of people who fully learned and the creative energy and the Maya of the Lord. Women and Shudras, members of the laboring and artisan classes, as well as the Hunas and Shabaras, and those leading a sinful life, nay, even lower animals such as birds and beasts, who have been taught to imbibe the virtues of the Lord's devotees, much more than those who follow the teachings of the Vedas, are able to realize the true nature of the Lord's Maya and cross the same. The substance of the Supreme Spirit is ever most serene and free from fear and of the nature of absolute consciousness. It is untainted by Maya and destitute of all diversities and is beyond the real as well as the unreal. It is beyond the reach of words and transcends the fruit of actions, which is attained as a result of diverse course of discipline. Nay, even Maya, who is ashamed to stand before it, flees away from its presence. That is the essential character of the Lord, the Supreme Person, which the wise realize as Brahman, the Absolute, which is free from sorrow and of the nature of eternal bliss. Having fixed their mind on him, ascetics neglect even the means of discarding the notion of difference, just as Indra, being himself the god of rain, has no use for a spade which is employed in digging wells. It is the Lord again who bestowed on man the fruit of his actions, for it is he who inspires all noble acts that are performed in accordance with the natural disposition of the doer. Even when the body gets dissolved as a result of its constituents in the form of the elements being disintegrated, the unborn spirit dwelling in it does not, any more than the ether interpenetrating it. Thus have I talked to you in brief, dear child, about the Lord, who creates the universe by his very thought. Whatever there exists as cause or effect is no other than Sri Hari, although the latter stands even apart from it. This is the Bhagavata which the Lord was pleased to teach me. It describes in brief the glories of the Lord. Do you now expand it? So this, what we were just given, was an earlier form of the Bhagavata, the form known to Brahma, and then it was expanded by Narada and taught to Vyasa, who further expanded it. And then it was further expanded by people like Shukadeva and Ugrasrava Shauta, and etc., into the Bhagavata that we are reading. Proceed with this work of amplification of the Bhagavata, with a will that men may develop devotion to Lord Sri Hari, the universal spirit and the sustainer of all. The mind of the man who proceeds to describe the Lord's Maya, or approves of another describing it, or reverently hears it described every day, is never deluded by Maya. Thus ends the seventh discourse in Book 2, comprising, among other things, the dialogue between Brahma and the sage Narada of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. And I think we've got a little more time. We'll start into Discourse 8. King Parikshit asks various questions of the sage Shuka. So this has been Shuka narrating to Parikshit this conversation, this ancient conversation between Brahma and Narada. So the king Parikshit then spoke up and said, Narada is wont to reveal the form of the Lord, O holy sage. Therefore, when Brahma urged him to describe the virtues of the Lord, who transcends the three gunas, to what particular individuals did Narada discourse about those virtues, and in what manner? I am curious to know this in reality, from you who are foremost among the knowers of the Vedas. For the stories of Sri Hari, who possesses marvelous powers, are a source of the highest blessing to the world. Tell me, highly blessed sage, how am I to fix my mind, which is free from all attachment, on Sri Krishna, the soul of the universe, before casting off this body? The Lord enters before long the heart of the man who daily listens with reverence to his stories and also narrates his doings. Reaching the lotus of his devotees' heart through the cavity of their ears, Sri Krishna rids it of all impurities, even as autumn turns the water clear. This is referring to the end of the monsoon. The waters during the monsoon tend to be kind of muddy and stirred up by rushing streams and such. And autumn, which follows the monsoon, tends to bring a clearing up of the waters as they become more settled and still. He whose heart is thus purified is rid of all afflictions and would never abandon the soles of his feet, just as a traveler, after a long and tedious journey, would not leave his own roof. The soul, O divine sage, has no connection with the elements, yet it takes a body which is made up of those very elements. You know in reality whether this happens as a matter of course or due to some causes. The Lord, from whose abdomen sprang up the lotus representing the 14 worlds, has been spoken of as distinctly endowed with the same limbs and the same number of limbs as an ordinary human being, the measurements alone being his own. The measurements being that he is the size of the universe. Hence, he is just like a common man. In what way, then, does he differ from man? It is by his grace that Brahma, who represents all beings, creates them, and it is by his grace alone that he was able to behold his divine form, that he, Brahma, was able to behold his, Vishnu's, divine form, though born of the lotus sprung from his navel. Where does that supreme person, who is the Lord of Maya and the indweller of all hearts, and from whom proceed the creation, preservation, and destruction of the universe, so where does that supreme person rest after throwing off his Maya? We have heard from yourself that the various worlds, together with their guardian deities, were formerly conceived in the limbs of the supreme person, and then again they were conceived as his limbs. So he's asking for clarification of that point. What is the length of a Mahakalpa and smaller kalpas, vikalpas? How is time, which is referred to by words like past, future, and present, to be known? And what is the allotted span of life of creatures that have identified themselves with their physical body? Again, how can the subtle and long movements of time be perceived? And how many destinies are there to be reached through karma? And what is their character, O noblest sage? Of the jivas who seek the fruit of the three gunas, what type of jivas resort to what kind of action, in what manner, and for what kind of fruit? How do the earth and patala, the four quarters and the sky, the planets and the stars, the mountains and rivers, seas and islands, and the creatures inhabiting these come into existence? What are the dimensions of the egg-shaped universe, within and without? Pray tell me also the stories of exalted souls and the distinctive character of the different varnas and ashramas. Kindly also let me know the characteristics of the various yugas, the duration of each, and the course of duties prescribed for each on the one hand, and the most wonderful stories of Srihari's descent during those yugas on the other. What are the common duties enjoined on men in general, and what are their special duties enjoined on specific subcategories of humans? Again, what are the duties peculiar to men following the different trades? Further, let me know the duties of royal sages, since he himself is a royal sage, as well as of men living in adverse circumstances. Kindly also tell me the number of various categories, meaning ultimate principles, the categories of Sankya philosophy, their distinctive character, as also their characteristic causality in respect of certain other categories, so which categories cause which other categories, the method of worshiping the Supreme Person, as well as of the yoga taught by the sage Patanjali. Again, what are the powers acquired by masters of yoga, and what is their destiny? And how does the linga sharira of the subtle body of the yogis dissolve? Again, what is the distinctive character and the theme of the Vedas and the Vedangas, the subsidiary Vedas, such as Ayurveda, as well as of the Dharma Shastra, the books on law, the Itihasas and Puranas? How do the creation, preservation, and dissolution of all beings take place? And what is the process of performing Vedic rites and works recommended by the Smriti texts, such as the digging of big and small wells and tanks, construction of temples to gods and gardens, etc., and bestowing food, since these are works recommended by the Smriti texts, like the Manu Smriti, for kings to do, as well as acts which are prompted by some selfish desire. Again, what is the unobjectionable method of pursuing the three objects of human aspiration, those being artha, or worldly possessions, dharma, or righteous conduct, and kama, or sensuous enjoyment? How are the jivas whose individuality has been merged in Prakriti during a Mahapralaya, meaning the dissolution of the universe that takes place at the end of a Brahma's life, how are they invested with a body again? And how does a heretical doctrine make its appearance? What is meant by the bondage and emancipation of a soul? And again, what is meant by the soul realizing its true character? How does the Lord, who is absolutely independent and all-pervading, sport with his own Maya? And how, after throwing off his Maya, does he stand unconcerned as a witness? O great and divine sage, pray tell me all this in reality, one after another, since I have approached you with the above questions and have sought refuge in you. You are an authority on these subjects, just like the self-born Brahma. Others, however, follow only what has been done by the ancestors of those who have gone before them. Rest assured, O divine sage, that this life of mine is not going to depart, but for the enraged Brahmana, even though I am abstaining from all food, drinking as I am the nectar in the form of the stories of Lord Achyuta. So meaning he's kind of saying poetically that I would never starve to death as long as you kept speaking to me. I would be nourished by that alone. The only reason I would ever die is because of the Brahman's curse. Sutta continued. So we're zooming out even one narrator further, since Sutta is narrating this whole thing. This, invited by King Parikshit, who had been rescued in his mother's womb by Lord Vishnu himself, to narrate the stories of the noble Lord in the midst of that assembly, the sage Shuka was highly pleased. He expounded the same Bhagavata Purana which had been taught by the Lord himself to Brahma at the beginning of the Brahma Kalpa, the Brahma Kalpa being the very first Kalpa of the present Mahakalpa, the present life of this Brahma, and which is held in the same esteem as the Vedas. He proceeded to answer seriatim all the questions that had been asked by Parikshit, the foremost of the scions of Pandu. Thus ends the 8th discourse, entitled A Statement of Questions, meaning Parikshit's list of questions, in Book 2 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. Well, we could pause there for today, or next we get into Shuka starting to answer that list of questions, which basically makes up the whole rest of the Bhagavatam. What would you guys like? Pause there or have a little bit further?
That's a really nice place to pause, especially considering that a couple people couldn't attend or couldn't listen in today.
True, yeah, I think so. And we'll pick up next time with Shuka starting to answer that huge list of questions.
What's the list of questions? I assume he was taking notes, like questions.
Sages like Shuka have a superhuman memory. Keep in mind, Shuka means parrot. His name literally means parrot because he is so good at repeating that which he's heard. Wow. In this case, referring to the Vedas. He heard the entire Vedas just once and perfectly memorized them. So I don't think he'd have a problem with that list of questions. But yeah. Wow. Yeah. All right, so we can pause there for today. I'll get the recording uploaded so that people can catch up on it. And yeah, we'll pick up next time.
Thanks so much, Devala.
Yeah, thank you all for coming.
Namaste to all. Devala, this is Dr. N.
Mm-hmm.
I think I wanted to connect with you, but I don't know which phone number is in your WhatsApp.
Oh, yeah. So my wife and I share one phone. Okay. So it's her name in the WhatsApp, but it's mostly me who uses it. So in there, it would be, her name is Melinda Gosvig. So Melinda Gosvig Reese. So it's under that name in the WhatsApp.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I will just send a hello through that and we can remain in touch.
Yeah.
And regarding the parrot, I just wanted to say some, because I love your commentary, right? And it relates so much to everything. So the parrot in the Sukkah, right? Mm-hmm. In an ancient tradition, almost all Brahmins had the parrots into their homes. And when you say that, because the parrot would repeat everything, and that's how he would remember. And we kind of remember that everything the Brahmin said. So then later on, you know, the people started keeping parrots as a pet into their homes.
Yeah.
And we know till today also that whatever we speak, the parrot would repeat. So
Yes.
that's something, just all these memories coming back
Mhm.
from the childhood. So I just wanted to share it with you.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's common even for like Brahmin families to have names that mean parrot, like Sharika, which is a word for parrot, is like a common Brahmin girl's name and stuff like that. It's a big part of the culture. Yeah.
Right. Yep. I'm just loving this. I just wanted to let you know. And thank you for bringing this to us. Right.
Yeah, thank you all for being part of it. I'm loving doing this process.
Right. Yep. And
Jai Shri
definitely
Krishna
we will
Devla Vasvi speaking
Jai
here.
Shri Krishna,
Jai Shri
Vasudhi.
Krishna. Yeah, and we were watching this Vishnu Puran, and this whole thing is, all the generation of Vishnus. It's amazing. You know all that. I'm just so mesmerized with your reading.
Well, thank you.
And I also like Andy's comments and input too. So I'm thankful to, and nice knowing the whole group, and Andy too, because he always has some nice input into it.
Yeah. Andy, I want to say, Andy does the Agnihotra morning and evening in the old way, the whole rite. He's very into that. So
Wow.
yeah, he's got some very good spiritual sadhanas going on.
Thank you.
I think that this year in Haridwar, the Kumbh Mela is going on.
Mm-hmm.
Kumbh is going on right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
In Haridwar.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it rotates there. Well, because there's the small melas and then the Kumbh Mela, and then once every so many years there's the Mahakumbh Mela. But yeah, it rotates between the four cities, Haridwar, Prayag, and it rotates between 4 sites. So yeah, it's in Haridwar this year. It's a big gathering.
Yeah. Last year when we was in Haridwar, we went, but we didn't go to. We just stayed in the Parmat.
Yeah.
My husband doesn't like to go in a crowd, so
it's crowded. Yeah, Kumbh Melas are very crowded.
But it is so amazing with this COVID also. They have planned and they are going on. It's just amazing. All the bhakts